Hello and welcome to the Last Word on Spurs. We are your multi-award winning Tottenham Hotspur podcast, and we are back twice in a day. You know, we're having to record double shows during a day. That's what is going on. Can anyone hear that at all, that background? We're all good. My apologies. We're all good. I had a bit of background noise there. My apologies. I am back with you. Like I say, if you have got that vibe, if we're recording two shows in a space of a few hours, you know there is a lot bubbling in and around the Spurs community. And we are here to fill you in on the latest of what is the merry-go-round in Tottenham Hotspur and what comes next. We jokingly said, what does season 3 bring? Let's see if we get to season 3, because I think it's fair to say that season 3 under Ange Postecoglou is at the point of already the plug being pulled. I'm joined by on this show, returning regular face over the last 7-8 years, who dips in and out. He's back for yet another big show. Jamie Brown's back from the Daily Hotspur. Jay, normal service being resumed?
Yeah, obviously coming on in strange circumstances. Obviously, I think you'll know, certainly, Ricky, I'm disappointed to hear kind of the news potentially coming out of Spurs. Obviously, the noise about Ange's future. Massive fan of Ange, but yeah, it's just kind of typical, really, that I've been doing this show for 7-8 years now, and been waiting endlessly for that to come on here and discuss a trophy. It's only been a week since we won that trophy, but only at Spurs you're going to be discussing the manager's future just a week later. So as you say, it's just normal service really at Spurs, and very, very interesting show ahead, I think.
Absolutely. It's going to be fascinating. Like I say, Jamie said there, a week or so ago, we're celebrating Tottenham Hotspur ending their trophy drought. Of course, 17-year wait for a trophy coming to an end. Heung-Min lifting that trophy proudly above his head. Ange Postecoglou becoming the first Tottenham head coach in over 40 years to deliver a European trophy. But we do know at the same time, Ange delivered Tottenham Hotspur's worst ever season in the Premier League. And that, of course, is why there are the questions around his job. Also back on the show, Patrick Tyrant's back. Pat, thanks so much. Feels like it could be a busy month and more in store, right?
Yeah, there's a lot going on, man. I'm not surprised with the news and the headlines. It's almost like the inevitable it's been raining. It's that dark cloud hanging over us, even though we should all be celebrating, still high off the Europa League euphoria. There's still this black cloud because of the league circumstances. But yeah, man, I'm happy to be back with you guys, and it's going to be an interesting show.
It is. And I will just say ahead of this show, I think some are going to be quite surprised by some of Pat's opinions on this show. I'll just leave it as that, and Pat will definitely divulge into more. Also back on the show, dotting around the Spurs community, normally is a man motivator for most of the time. Listen, Tottenham, that's a new motivation job in itself. We've got the wonderful Ash Matter back from the Spurs Kings. Ash, how are you? Like we've said, never a dull moment, right? It's going to be a busy next few weeks for sure for Tottenham either way.
Yeah, man, I'm here, man. I'm blessed. Health is good. So what more can I say? In terms of being a Spurs fan, is never a dull moment. Never. 1 minute, tearful, happy for Son. A lot of the fans coming together, meeting people the first time in a massive parade. One we haven't seen for 17 years, guys. And now that victory, that, joyous a moment has been cut short. All because we don't know the future of Ange Postecoglou and where the actual board see our actual club in the near future. Lots of clubs are getting business done. This transfer market has been open very early because of the Club World Cup. And so now we're seeing a lot of the teams that we're competing against move very early. So I think a lot of fans, we've been kind of split in the middle, in my opinion. There's been a lot of different opinions on Ange, whether he should stay or not. And you can see it in the chat. You can see it in the WhatsApp groups. You can see it on social media. And I think this is the reason why we're here at the moment. You've already mentioned where we are in the league and what we've achieved. It's like our best and worst. You just can't make it up. It's like an oxymoron, Spurs. I feel like we're a social experiment at times, and a lot of people are split at the moment. And that's where I am at the moment, split.
Yeah, and I think that's what kind of leads to why we've got this news, is because there is a real split at boardroom level. There's a split amongst the fan base. We've currently got a running poll at the moment as to whether you feel would stacking Ange Postecoglou and bringing Thomas Frank in as the replacement be the right answer. And we'll read you that poll at the very, very end on this show. But let's start, if we can, with a bit of happy news. You know, I get off in there'll be a lot of things that split the fan base, but I think this one won't split the fan base. Although, depending how you saw PSG play the other night, this might split the fan base. Tottenham will face Paris Saint-Germain. We now need to know and understand is who is the manager going to be. Let's bring you the latest as we understand on Tottenham Hotspur situation around Ange Postecoglou and what comes next. We understand Tottenham at the moment are currently speaking to a number of managers with regards to replacing Ange Postecoglou, but the Europa League winning manager is in the dark as to whether Tottenham are going to sack him or not. It is understood at the time of recording this show, Daniel Levy, chairman of the football club, is understood to be weighing up that decision as to whether keep or sack. And in what is a crunch decision, it feels, for the direction of the football club. As things stands, it is more likely a change in the dugout is made with a decision expected this week for our listeners on audio, but it is not a foregone conclusion. The representatives of a number of possible successors are believed to have been contacted in the meantime. At the moment, they include, as we understand, Thomas Frank, who Tottenham have had direct contact with and has been spoken to, and he is high on the list of candidates if Tottenham do decide to make a change. Also on that list, we understand, is Marco Silva of Fulham. That is also been confirmed. We know the club have a genuine interest in Oliver Glasner at Crystal Palace, who performed heroics over there by winning the FA Cup and has stated that he is 99% certain to be staying with the Eagles. There is also reported interest, and we have to say it's been reported at the moment, in Champions League runner-up Simone Inzaghi of Inter Milan, that saw his side thrashed 5-0 in the final to Paris Saint-Germain. We know Ange has been made to wait and wait on his future as he took a holiday last week. And that was obviously despite, as we mentioned, clinching the club's first piece of silverware since 2008, a fortnight almost ago. And the decision around what comes next is being led, as we understand, by a number of high-profile executives at the club. They do include the incoming and former Arsenal CEO, Vinay Venkatesham, as chief executive, who will be coming through the door with Scott Munn going the other way. And also set to return to the club is Fabio Paratici once his 2.5-year ban for financial malpractice at Juventus is over at the end of the month. Now, Fabrizio Romano has reported that Ange Postecoglou has always been, to date, confident of continuing at Tottenham publicly and privately, although, as I've mentioned, Thomas Frank and Marco Silva are two of the managerial candidates that have been discussed internally at Tottenham. And as we have heard, talks have been reportedly held directly with Thomas Frank. This, at the moment, has led to there being a number of different feelings, different opinions. We'll be discussing all that in this edition of Last Word on Spurs. But let's open, if we can, I think, with the initial feeling of the fact Ange will possibly be departing the club and Thomas Frank will be arriving. Let's start with you, Jay. You've seen a lot of exits, arrival, Last Word on Spurs managers. How are you feeling right now?
Yeah, I think two real strong feelings. I think the first one is concern, just because I worry how the playing squad's going to react to this news. I mean, as much as you can question Postecoglou's tactics and everything else, I think it's that, that togetherness that he really built in that squad. I think he did a fantastic job, getting everyone to buy into his ideas, getting behind him. And I think, you saw that in the parade and just those performances in that Europa League where they really bought into him. And obviously a lot of discussion around whether, had he lost the dressing room. Well, I think it became very clear that they absolutely loved him. So, you know, you look at players like Christian Romero, Pedro Porro, and obviously people will look at Romero. I mean, you know, maybe a guy who looks like he might have been out the door anyway, but he's, you know, we saw how good he is. I mean, we've seen his record in major cup finals, obviously for Argentina. Now for Spurs, you know, for me, he was going to be the guy that was going to win it for us if we were going to win that final. And look at his performance. So I do really worry about the reaction of the playing squad. And then obviously the other feeling I think is real disappointment. It's disappointment that, you know, we've seen what he can do here at Spurs in terms of that confidence to go and deliver on his promises, that ability to get Spurs over the line. I think it was something that we've never really seen at Spurs. It was a manager that completely believed in us as a football club, that absolutely bought into everything. And you know, that's why I've always really loved him. He kind of always really understood Tottenham Hotspur as a football club. He always understood what the fans wanted. You know, one of the first things he said was, you know, it's not what I want, it's about what the fans want and obviously he made that assessment that we needed that trophy and there it is. You can see on screen, that's what he delivered. It was just the most incredible couple of days. So, as I said, obviously concern about how the playing squad's going to react and disappointment that we're not deciding to go and invest in this manager that's obviously got us over the line for the first time in 17 years.
Yeah, we're going to come on to, like you said there, Jay, the fact of what potential incoming there may be in his place. But Pat, let's come over to you. I think it's fair to say, look, football does move fast, feelings do move fast, and I think the last week or so has been difficult for many to process. Again, you know, once the nature of what you've achieved, you know, in the fact of winning that Europa League really comes home to heart, and the fact that, you know, going into the off season that we knew with regards to Paratici, as we know, coming back to the football club, and Vinay Venkatesham coming in, that, you know, it was up to the board then to really, in this week ahead, sit down and decide really what they feel is the best course of action to take the club forward. And I think what we have seen is a real split. Certainly, I think a lot of the Spurs fan base that, you know, there's been sways towards giving Ange the opportunity now for that third season, many believing he deserves that after delivering Tottenham that first, as we've touched upon, European trophy for 40 years, ending that 17-year wait for a trophy. You then come on to the fact that, you know, given that we've
Can you hear me? I lost you. I can't hear you. Can you hear me?
I think you might have broken up there a little bit, Ricky. But
have you got me now?
Vicky, you cut out for a bit, so I missed the ending of your. You know, if you ask me a question, I missed the end part of it.
Take us away where you feel kind of how this week has panned out so far.
Okay, I think that it's such a weird one because it's really divided the Spurs fan base, and even the WhatsApp chat groups have been mayhem. You know, just conversations have been a bit sticky. Everyone's feeling a bit sensitive because on one hand, we've just come off the back of major European glory, our first trophy in 17 years, our first European major honours in 40 years. And what we did is massive. It's not, with all due respect to Carabao Cup or FA Cup, this is a Europa League. It's huge what we've done. You know, the whole of Europe watched us play that game. And it wasn't like we played, with all due respect to Bodo Glint or a smaller team. We played Man United, one of the biggest teams in the world. Everyone was tuned in. And we beat them fair and square, and it was a great feeling. But with all that being said, I'm not surprised that we are where we are, and I hate the fact that we are here. But we all went through the same season, so I kind of feel a bit, you know, I've been arguing back and forth with like Jason's and, you know, of quite a few people because we're just so like chalk and cheese at the moment of where our views lay. And I'm surprised that more fans aren't really seeing it from the point of we lost 22 games, 10 home games, 22, the most amount of games in a Premier League season for a team not to be relegated. We only finished on 38 points. So when you look at all of that and we finished 17th, a point, and I know we weren't drawn into a relegation scrap, but to finish 17th is embarrassing. To not even register, you know, 40 points is embarrassing. To lose 22 games is crazy. It's suicidal. Like, it's just it's incomprehensible for a team of Tottenham Hotspur's magnitude. In many other seasons, teams that have lost less games than us have been relegated. So when you add that all together, I'm not surprised that we are where we are. And it's not like Ange is being completely backed in a sense of they are going to be question marks over his tenure, because in any other season, this would be, it would be detrimental to the club. It would be catastrophic. So when you look at that, and I know he won the Europa, but when I hear the arguments of how he completely neglected the Premier League campaign to focus on Europe, it doesn't fill me with the confidence that I can back this manager, and I will also be, comfortable him taking our summer transfer spend, investing in new players, and then starting a new season. Because we've got not only a Premier League season to get to grips with next year, we've also got Champions League football. So I look at it and I'm like, it's a confusing one, because of course the guys just won us silverware. But realistically, any big club or any club with standards, and even fan bases with standards, this manager should be sacked. I hate to say it, but it's the truth. Like, the reality is, you can't lose 22 games and still compete and still think that you're going to have the board and fans convinced that you're the man to take us forward. Do I trust this manager with, a new crop of players? Do I trust this manager to take us into next season and start the season strongly, and also maintain the same standards in the Champions League? Next year, you won't be able to rotate and drop players halfway through a campaign, because the Champions League and Europa League are a complete different kettle of fish. And then so what happens there? I just think that, hopefully I'm getting my point across. I don't know if it's making sense to you guys, but I just think that when you lose 22 games in the manner that we did, and we're so easy to, cut open, we conceded so many, it's embarrassing. And I think the trophy was great, and obviously it's amazing. And because it's something that hasn't been done before, I think a lot of people have lost their heads and have forgotten how bad we really were and how worrying it was. And if this continues into next season, God forbid, what could happen?
I think I hear your point, Pat, 100%. I think the concern right now is maybe for those is what comes next, and whether what comes next actually solves the problem. I think that is the biggest issue right now. Am I still with you guys okay? Am I still with you? I think I am. Am I with you okay? I'm going to go to Ash next. I mean, Ash, we are going to bring up to speed where we are with regards to the losing you guys. Have I lost you again? Let me go over to Ash. I'll let Ash take the mic, and I'm going to try and sort my net out. Ash, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I missed the question, but I'm assuming that we're talking about Thomas Frank now, and I think the expectations of the fan base are slightly underwhelmed. I think that's an understatement from what I'm reading in the chat, from what I'm reading in group conversations. People perceive Tottenham Hotspur as a top 4/top 6 club minimum. And so appointing a manager like Thomas Frank, or being linked to Thomas Frank after we've won the Europa Cup, it feels like, I think Patrick said it before, a sideways step, or some might even say a backward step, because no offense to Thomas, he's taken a championship team and he's basically kept them afloat. They're more or less mid-table, and if we're aspiring to kick on and we're looking to go past the Europa Cup final and get either more trophies or finish higher up the table, is he the man to do it? Is he the man to handle Europe? He's never managed a Europa Cup spot team. He's never managed in the Champions League. So in that sense, he's a bit of a rookie. And so can he take someone of our size of a club to the heights where it needs to be? It's going to be different types of political pressure. And also, when you're dealing with the type of club that we have, there's going to be fans that may have been on Ange Postecoglou's side. Ange Postecoglou clearly had the players on side. He had the winning momentum on his side as well after just winning a game. We hadn't won a cup in 17 years. So bringing that together, also the chopping and changing of managers. We haven't been consistent on keeping a manager together. So we wanted to see what a project looked like with a manager there for more than 2 years. And also, he's really impacted the way, the fans feel about the club. For a long time, fans haven't felt this much. There's a lot of people that were Ange out. There were a lot, and a lot of them came over because of the cup win, the feeling. No one thought that they would feel like this. And so, if Thomas Frank comes in and Ange goes, I think there's going to be a feeling that, you know, we're not going to give him as much time. A bit like a Nuno situation where Nuno wasn't really that kind of brand of manager where the fans could get behind, similar to what happened with Harry Kane. Harry Kane wasn't behind him. He didn't really see that he could be looking forward with this particular manager. Maybe some of the players, e.g. Romero, he might look at that and think, you know, maybe he's not the type of guy to move us forward. I'm seeing here, you've got, you know, Thomas Frank came in, got them promoted. And with that promoted team, he's managed to get them to 13th, 9th, 16th and 9th. And I said to you behind stage, Ricky, maybe it's a situation, and this is me trying to have a half glass full, that maybe it was a case where, you know, Harry Redknapp, he took us from, you know, a lower league finish after Juan de Ramos. It was a bit of a different situation, but under Juan de Ramos, you know, he was there to help stabilize the club and just push us up the table. Maybe the club are looking at Thomas Frank and they're thinking we were 17th and hopefully he can push us up to the table. Obviously, with Harry Redknapp, he did better. He got us 8th and then we started to push on. We went 5th and then 4th and then 4th. So maybe the idea behind Thomas Frank is that maybe with a limited budget that he had at Brentford, the fact that he's a coach, the fact that it's improved players like Ollie Watkins, he's improved players like Ivan Toney, he's improved players like Wisa. Like before, people would say, you know, Tottenham have a better squad than Brentford. Now I'm hearing a lot of fans say, you know, actually Brentford's squad's better than Tottenham's and maybe their recruitment's better. But what if the coach is hands-on and he's good at developing players like Henry as well, Rico Henry? As I said, people haven't heard of Mbeumo before he came to Brentford. So Mbeumo scoring 21 goals this season, one of the players of the season. Could he get more out of some of our players? Could he get more out of, I don't know, Brennan Johnson? You know, Brennan Johnson was heavily linked to Brentford. That's a player that Thomas Frank really liked and wanted at the club. Archie Gray, again, he was, you know, not too far from getting over the line for Brentford. So maybe
just to say,
he's looking at those players.
Ash,
maybe,
come on here, Ash. Have we got him? Have we lost him?
yeah, I don't know if you guys got me on that.
Ash, all good, Ash. Carry on.
But yeah, literally, I'm going to wrap it up because I've been talking for quite a bit. But, you know, I see the pros, I see the concerns. And I'm going to wrap it up by saying, I think with Spurs fans, they're not going to think he's the one to kick on the project, if that makes sense. We look for maybe a Xavi or maybe a Inzaghi. I know he hasn't won the cup, but, you know, at least he got to the final. Obviously, with Xavi, he has won the cup with Spain. He had won the La Liga and he actually did the cup double. And again, both of them are coaches and they're renowned to getting on the grass and developing players. And I think that's where most fans want to see a coach employed where they're able to not just be wedded to one philosophy, but they have multiple up the line.
I think, listen, it's, as we've seen already when the show is ongoing, it's a fascinating debate which is splitting many, many people. Jay, if I can come to you, what's your feeling on this? Ash has laid out a number of, I think, really interesting points there on Thomas Frank, on, you know, why there's a lot of reasons why Tottenham may be looking at him.
Yeah.
For me, I'll be honest, I'll put my cards on the table. I think if you were to say to me now, do you want to swap Ange Postecoglou for Thomas Frank? I think it's a real sideways step. I don't really see it being an upgrade. I'm really torn on this because I think many people know that I've not been fully on the Ange train. You know, let's be honest about it, I haven't been. But at the same time, I think when you're showing me the options out there, if at the moment Ange has got the momentum behind him, and I think at the moment, maybe in my opinion, probably deserves the start to the season, depending on the options out there, and we're swapping in with Thomas Frank, again, just my opinion, I see that as a real sideways step, and I see this going either way at the moment with regards to the fans. I think a lot of people will look at this similar to the Nuno situation where Frank has worked very, very well with a specific style of football at Brentford with a certain makeup of players and a certain expectation about how to play your football. I worry that a club like Tottenham, and many might think, again, this is toxic fans and having unrealistic expectations. I worry for Frank that he's coming already to a difficult job to start with. What's your feeling on it?
Yeah, I think it's probably slightly different circumstances to why it's difficult for, obviously, when Nuno came in, I think he came into a pretty horrible situation at Spurs, where as a club, we were a bit of a mess. I think with Frank, he'd be coming into a tricky situation because he's having to follow up a manager who's just ended a 17-year wait. So I think that Thomas Frank's a good coach. I think that he's a coach that's probably worthy of getting an upgraded job. I think we spoke off air that he was a manager that was linked with the Liverpool job. And but yeah, there is those concerns. Obviously, he does play football that's pretty, going to be pretty different to what we've been used to under Ange Postecoglou. Obviously, under Ange, it was very much about attacking football. With Thomas Frank, it is very different. He's more of a direct, he'll be a slightly more defensive manager. And yeah, that will be the other concern, is whether he can make that step up. I mean, we've seen it with so many players where, they just suited being at that kind of less pressurized club. And yeah, maybe Thomas Frank is like that. But look, he's obviously someone who is similar to Ange in the sense that he's a very good man motivator. He's a very good coach. Ash made the points about all the players that he's improved. I mean, there's some really great names there. With Ivan Toney, obviously, was a fantastic Premier League player. Brian Mbeumo as well. Obviously, Visser, so many players. So I think that's obviously been a key reason why they want him in, because he has been able to develop players. And obviously, we know Spurs, that's how they work. So I agree. I think it is somewhat of a sideways step, but I do think it is a good coach. I'm not completely against it if he was to come in, but for me, I've made my view very clear on Ange. For me, I'd be investing in him, trying to invest in him. But I think the problem with that, I think the thing with Ange is, and I'm sure we'll run into with Frank, and as we've run into with multiple other managers, I think it's just a case of they don't want to invest in the key areas that make the team a success. I mean, Spurs need a really top holding midfielder, in my opinion, to make Ange's system work. I don't know whether they'd be willing to go and do that. I think it was very similar under Conte as well, wasn't it? Where it was very clear he needed a top left-sided central defender, weren't willing to do that. Same under Mourinho. So, yeah, I think, he's going to run into similar concerns that all the other managers have. So I said I like Frank, but I just think I think you guys are right, just a bit of a sideways step.
Pat, let me come over to you, because you have made your feelings clear with regards to Ange Postecoglou. And I must just say with Frank, one thing I must say from my perspective is that, look, he's done a decent job at Brentford. You can't get away from that, the trajectory of where he's taken that club and the players that he's worked with. And the argument will be, as I think Jamie has rightly said, that Frank is deserving, hope Brentford fans don't mind me saying this, of maybe being given that bigger opportunity in the Premier League. Whether that bigger opportunity should be Tottenham is a big question. Pat, where are you on the potential of Thomas Frank coming in as the successor to Ange Postecoglou?
Yeah, I feel that I like Thomas Frank, don't get me wrong, and I like Brentford. I like what they've done since they've come up. I think Frank is a very good manager. I agree with the boys and the fact that he's a very good coach. He's improved players. He's made players that none of us had heard of, household names. Wissa, brilliant player now. And Bremo, 20 goals, 7 assists. Mikkel Damsgaard, who I really like, 10 assists and 2 goals. You're looking at Kevin Schade, a player that probably none of us have heard of, now starting for Germany, 11 goals, 2 assists. So from that aspect, he's a very good coach. But I'm sick and tired of Tottenham being the project. Tottenham he deserves a step up, so let Tottenham be the team that takes a gamble on him. I feel for now we should be at a place where, especially off the back of winning a major trophy, being in the Champions League, go out and get a proven winner. Otherwise, like you said, Ricky, for me, it's a sideways step. Credit to him. I'm not taking anything away from him. I think he's a good manager and a good coach. But I'm sick and tired of us not being, adventurous, ambitious, and really going for the big names, the top coaches, the coaches that will actually improve us and make us the team that we all want to see. Like I know Inzaghi didn't win the Champions League, but that guy is a proven winner. His CV is illustrious. He's won the Serie A. He's won hella Coppa, Italias, won loads of cups. Top manager. Those are the managers we should be going for right now. Thomas Frank isn't even, in my opinion, his CV isn't better than Ange Postecoglou's. He's not a winner like Ange Postecoglou, and I don't even want Ange Postecoglou. So why would I then want Thomas Frank? I just don't think it makes sense for me. If you're gonna, and as much as I don't want Ange, I'd rather stick with Ange than go for Thomas Frank. At least Ange has won something with this Tottenham team. At least Ange has a connection with the fans. At least Ange has a connection with the players. Why would you get rid of that to then go and get Thomas Frank? I really don't get it. I think this board, if they do that, they're crazy. Like, it makes no sense in that sense. So either you go and get a proven top manager, or you stick with Ange and you back him properly. Give him the tools that he needs to succeed. And in that way, if he does flop, cool, you know that it's on the manager. Because a lot of people say, no, Ange didn't have the tools to, play in the Europa League and play in the Premier League. I disagree, to be honest. But at least if that's the feeling, then back him properly and then let's see what's what. But to go from Ange to Thomas Frank, I really don't get it. Frank has stabilised, Brentford, made them a decent Premier League team. They're not exciting to watch. They're okay. Got some good players. Like the stats here say, 13th, 9th, 16th and 9th. That's okay. It's nothing. It doesn't scream at me that this guy should be the next Tottenham Hotspur manager. He doesn't play a brand of football that you would look at and say, oh my God, this guy's the next guy. Yes, he improves players, so I get that side of things. But other than that, I really don't understand why we would sack off Ange to go get this guy. So yeah, I just don't know. This Tottenham board, they make no sense whatsoever. Like, it makes no sense. And then you're going to essentially lose your Romeros, your Bentancurs, your Kulusevskis, the guys that have really bought into Ange's philosophy to go and get a Thomas Frank.
And you're saying this, Pat, as a man that doesn't want Ange Postecoglou.
I feel not everyone's always going to agree with everything I say, but I try and just be straight shooting and just say what I feel. I don't sit on the fence, and I just feel that it doesn't make no sense. It's a weird one because, like I said, I do like Thomas Frank, but why is it always Tottenham being the team Tottenham are the big team? Forget that. Be ambitious and actually follow the big clubs that are trying to win things. And none of the other clubs will go for Thomas Frank. Let's be honest.
I hear what you're saying, but what if the club, and I'm just playing Angel's advocate here, they're looking at
all Devils and Angels.
Either one, it's a Sunday, so I thought I'd go with an Angel. But hey, I'm saying, look, what if their ambition, not ambition, what they're looking for is the budget they have in mind is not the level where they think they can splash like a Chelsea or a Man City or even an Arsenal. Like, Spurs are more of a builder club. Meaning that what they want their coaches to do is improve players, and the director of football, he's the one that kind of picks the manager. He's the one that, picks the direction that the football club's going in. So with Thomas Frank at Brentford, he had a shoestring of a budget. And when he got players in, they improved dramatically. And I think you showed up before, Ricky, the actual correlation between the wage bracket, where you're expected to finish in a table, and you compare Brentford, who are 5th, who have roughly 6.8 million, it says here, and Tottenham, we're 17th with 747 million, 22 million per points won. So he's punching well above his weight. He shouldn't be anywhere near, and we should be way higher up. So maybe they're thinking, with that budget, between him and Iriola, what they've done, and even Crystal Palace's manager, Glasner, they're thinking maybe they're going to get a coach in that doesn't have a massive budget, but they can get the best out of this squad and push us up the table. And I'm agreeing with you, Patrick. I know, like, my expectation is that Spurs should be minimum top 6, top 4 type of club. But maybe they're thinking, with this guy, he can get more out of these players and we finish higher at the top. Forget Champions League for a second, because I don't think we're going to win Champions League for a second. Cup competitions, could we win 2 cups in a year in a row? Maybe not. So maybe they're seeing a slightly different direction. Whether I agree with it is completely different. Maybe I'm with you, Pat. Like, we need to be having the Inzaghis, we need to be having the Xavis, but I don't know if they've had that conversation and those managers thought, you know, with that budget, I don't know if I can work miracles. Do you know what I mean? So I just thought I'd throw that out there.
No, I hear you. And just going back off that, Ricky, just quickly, I just think, where is the ambition and where is the game-changing stadium like mindset coming in? When is it actually going to take place? We've just won a major trophy. We're just back now in the Champions League. We earn so much money. The revenue of the stadium is crazy. Plus, Tottenham is a big brand anyway. When are they actually going to start investing and pushing the club forward? Why is it we have to look at a manager that can get the best out of a small budget and blah, blah, blah? Why don't we get a top manager, actually spend the money and then push on?
You imagine if you had Chelsea, you know, imagine if Chelsea were kind of in our situation where they've got a manager who'd won them a trophy. It's been ages. You know, they'd be going and building on that. They'd be doing everything possible to make sure that next season we're even better, and they would be willing to take that risk. You know, Ange Postecoglou, for as shocking as we were in the league, you know, he delivered what he said he was going to deliver, and you know, to have that confidence, you should be wanting to invest in that and wanting to go again and thinking, you know, it was crazy to think we were going to end that 17-year wait with the Europa League, having had all the injuries and obviously everything that went with it. So why can't we go for, you know, for a great run in the Champions League? Why can't we push up the table with this manager? But, you know, they just don't have.
Wasn't the narrative though? Wasn't the narrative? Sorry to cut you off. Wasn't the narrative that Di Matteo with Chelsea, you know, he got the chance when he won the Champions League, didn't quite work out, and then he was quickly fired. Then the other example that most fans were saying that weren't, you know, too in favor of Ange Postecoglou, they were saying, actually, if you look at Ten Hag, he won a trophy in his first season and in his second season, and it still didn't quite work out. And maybe the board are looking at that and thinking this trophy saved our season, as opposed to looking at it as an indication of where we're going to head. So I don't know if they looked at the performance level as well, not just in Europa. It's not like we blitzed Europa. We're winning it by the odd goal, apart from maybe Bodo Glimt, where we won 3-1 at home. Other results were like 1-0, 2-0 here. Like, we're winning it by the odd goal. Manchester United, we won 1-0. But then in the actual Premier League, we lost, as you said, Patrick, 22 games, 38 games, 38 points. And I'm not sure if that's been done by a Big Six club before. I'm just thinking from their point of view, maybe they're looking at that and were slightly worried. I don't know. I'm not in front of the board at the moment.
What do you think, Jamie, just on Johan Lange, who we understand is still going to remain at the club, even if and when Parategy does return to post? We are, you know, there's been a lot of reports out there. I'm sure you've been across them as well, Jay, that Johan Lange has always been quite a big fan of Thomas Frank, a man that also in Thomas Frank, we have to also say this for those that are unaware, he is a base client, which normally the Tottenham is quite a big thing if they are a base client. It makes the move a lot easier for the football club if they're from the same agency. Again, operates with data analysis, and that's how Tottenham now are operating as a football club. Is that one of the key fundamentals here, Jamie, with regards to this potential appointment, the fact that Lange seems to know him well, Frank operates via data, he's a proven Premier League manager, he has shown that he can get the best out of what he's got, and whilst I totally agree with Pat that we should be aiming and wanting more than that, that will maybe be where the board's angle is looking as to why Frank is a viable candidate. And can I just say, probably, I don't know if you agree, Jamie, probably the shortest or smallest quality of pool list of managers that we've had to look at in a long, long time. I think when we looked at the last set of managers that Tottenham had at the point of when they were looking for Ange, I think you had Nagelsmann in there, you had Slot in there, didn't you? Tell me if I'm missing anybody. If it was this time around, and the nature of how this is panning out this week, that list is a lot more shorter.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, look, that's the other thing as well. Just on Frank, I mean, I've obviously made my feelings clear, and I think that he's a good coach, and as well, just the Nuno comparison as well. Obviously, we know Nuno was so far down the list. I think that it was, got to a point where it was incredibly embarrassing. I mean, it was 72 days we took to kind of, I don't know if that's completely wrong.
That is correct. That is right.
Yeah,
it was a 72-day
we took so long to get him. Whereas obviously we are making a pretty quick decision here with getting him in. So obviously he's got that credibility. I think it's quite clear that Langer's obviously chosen him as well as the manager that he wants. So at least there is some sort of alignment in terms of what the sporting director wants, and he's getting the exact man that he wants through the door. So that's kind of the only thing I can say about that. But yes, as the guy said, it would be great to kind of see that ambition. But even when if we were to get someone like Inzaghi, who's probably the biggest name available, and as Pat said, has won all those trophies. I mean, I just don't think the board. We've seen that we've had the Jose Mourinho's, the Antonio Contes, and it just never worked out. So even someone like Inzaghi, as great as his CV is, just doesn't excite me either, because I know that we've let better managers down than Inzaghi. So if Mourinho couldn't succeed, if Conte couldn't succeed, I don't see why Inzaghi would come in and succeed. So unfortunately, it's the way the club is run, as Ash said as well. I think they're getting him in because he's great at developing younger players, and he fits the model that ENIC are, the way that ENIC like to run the club. So it's obviously very, very disappointing for Spurs fans that pay incredible season ticket prices to go, but yeah, that's unfortunately what we've got whilst these owners are still in charge.
Can I ask, we do need to go to a break in a second. If the club were going to be sacking Ange Postecoglou, if I was to ask you all to name me who would be, in your opinion, your preferred manager when making that decision, who would you have gone with, Pat? Is there a clear, distinctive name that you would have gone with?
As in a realistic one from the names that have been banded around, or just someone that I really like and would want at the club?
I mean, both realistic and who you would maybe like. Who would you have gone for?
I mean, the realistic one would be Inzaghi right now. I feel he wants to change. I know he didn't represent himself in the best light in the Champions League, which was yesterday or maybe 2 days ago, if you're listening to this on the Monday commute. But I think he's a fantastic manager. CV speaks for himself. He's won a Serie A. He's won countless cups. Really good manager, defensively solid, plays good football. I think he would be fantastic. But again, like Jamie says, will the club back him? For me, I'm so frustrated. I feel that at some point, this chairman has to actually put his money where his mouth is if he wants Tottenham to succeed. Otherwise, we will just go down this route again of being embarrassed and finishing 15th, 16th, 14th. Something has to change from him if he wants the club to progress. We lucked out with the cup. It's so frustrating, but we can't continue this merry-go-round. But anyway, I digress. And regards to if it's a Premier League manager who gets the best out of players and is kind of attainable and all of that stuff, I would go for Iraola. Personally, I think he's a better manager than Thomas Frank. Plays a better brand of football, more possession based. Again, a good coach. And someone who I actually like, young, energetic, and he's proved. Again, there's no, in terms of his major honours and all of that, it's not there. But at least he kind of plays a football that we can get behind. Had a massive injury list as well, but still managed to finish in a respectable position. I feel he's a better coach than Ange Postecoglou, dare I say it. So those would be the managers I would look at right now.
I think what is it's frustrating some fans, Ash, coming over to you, is the fact that, and I will say this because many know how I feel about Ange Postecoglou, is that in that first season, he lost Harry Kane. And we know from, again, from the opening 10 games of the honeymoon period, we know the points per game since that wasn't great. But he still got Tottenham to a 5th place finish, Ash, in that first season. In his second season, he's won a trophy. What I would love to know is, what is the remit going to be if Thomas Frank is the manager, where in season 1, Ange has delivered 5th place without Harry Kane. In second season, he's delivered a Europa League, and you're sacking him. I would love to know what they're expecting of Frank to be. I mean, your point on that, and also who you would have liked had Tottenham, or if Tottenham obviously were going to sack Ange Postecoglou, which now seems inevitable.
I think they're trying to get the best buck for their dollar, meaning that they're looking at what maybe Thomas Frank is offering in terms of, we need to reduce the amount of goals we're conceding. and we need to climb up the table as quickly as possible. And maybe that's why they've gone for a manager that's not wedded to a philosophy, and he has more than one style, more than one formation as well. When he plays with a 4-2-3-1, he can play with a 3-2-4-1 at times as well in possession. Can go to a back five, can make the fullbacks overlap, which a lot of people have been asking for. Can actually make the number 9 play inside the box, so he's not playing as a number 10. And then you've got overall, he adapts to the particular opponent that he's being faced, and he's a good man-to-man manager. So maybe the remit is literally just get us up the table. They're going to keep it very simple. I'm not expecting them to think they're expecting a top 6 or a top 4 finish. As you've already mentioned, Ange Postecoglou managed to get Spurs 5th without Harry Kane. But, some of the people that were Ange out, or maybe still are, they would argue that Ange had us winning with the first, 10 games. And then the form was a bit iffy. It was a bit up and down in between. And then towards the end, it fell off. And then we kind of missed out on the top 4. We ended 5th. However, no one expected Spurs to finish 5th. So you have to give him that credit. As you just said, he finished 5th in his first season and he won us a cup in the second season. It hasn't been good enough. So how can you contend? Like, I don't really have the answer. It's such a nuanced argument, Ricky. It's such a hard debate to have. What is the right answer? I don't really know. And I think that's why there's been this Ange in and Ange out debate. Who would I have, though? Who would I have? I'm looking at what Luis Enrique did. And the only man to play underneath Luis Enrique and Pep Guardiola was Xavi. Xavi Hernandez played underneath both of them. And I know under Luis Enrique, as Barcelona, when Xavi was playing underneath them, they went from Pep's tiki-taka style to more direct into the front three. So he might have a blend of, the way Enrique liked to press, how he pressed Inzaghi's team. We saw that on the weekend for the Champions League final. We've seen how, Xavi Hernandez is well respected as one of the best midfielders across Europe. So he'll be able to develop young players such as Lucas Bergvall, such as Sarr, and he might be able to get the command of the transfer market, and players might want to come and play for him. So maybe naturally, that would be the dream job for us, to maybe get the best buck out of, the best bang out of the buck. I don't know. I can't really say we'd probably back Xavi Hernandez. So maybe he wouldn't be the right deal for Spurs, but he just seems to, if we want to stick to the philosophy, if we want to stick to the project, and you want to move on from Postecoglou, and you want to keep playing that 4-3-3, he's that kind of manager that can play the 4-3-3 or the 4-2-3-1 or 3 at the back in possession, play a little bit more direct. And that's where, the Premier League seems to be heading in that direction, because even Pep said, I have to change and I have to be more like the Newcastles, the Brightons and the Bournemouth, because they like to play direct. And that's why you're seeing him change his midfield and get players in like Reinders that have a bit more legs to help Rodri. And I think that's where our biggest position flaw was, in that middle, where we were getting penetrated time after time, where our back 4 kept running to the back to goal, and we were desperately crying out for a number 6. Why? Because our pressing structure wasn't compact, it wasn't tight. And even just to finish on this point, because I've been talking for quite a bit, I was looking at all of the games where we won really well. So I looked at Everton, where we won 4-1 or 4-0 at home. That was the best team, the best style play we played with possession football. And we had 70% of the ball at home. The other teams, West Ham, we played at home 4-1. Aston Villa, we won 4-1 again, or 4-0. Those games there, we had 50% or less of the ball. We looked better in the transition. Also, Manchester United, when we beat them, teams that like to come at us. Man City, another team that like to play football. When they're spacing behind, that's when Spurs look most dangerous, on the transition, on the counter-attack. So whatever manager comes in, they need to employ some of those tactics, because I felt like Spurs do not have the type of players that are comfortable in possession, where we can slow the game down, control or rest with the ball, rest with possession, where we can break down low blocks. So when it comes to low blocks, I don't think Spurs are that type of team where we can break teams down. So I think a manager that suits that style would probably be the best fit.
Ash, thank you. I mean, Jay, I will ask you a similar question what I asked the guys there. You know, Andy's first season, they finished 5th. Second season, he's won a trophy. What are the board, if they are appointing Thomas Frank, what is the remit of what he's coming in to do at Tottenham, in your opinion? What is he being tasked to do?
I think ultimately it's just going to be about getting in the Champions League. I think, you know, we can kind of say whatever we want, but I think ultimately they're just going to be expecting Champions League football. Or, you know, I mean, it's tricky to expect that in the first season, and maybe they might be a bit more realistic and say, you know, let's aim for at least, you know, finishing in the top 7. But yeah, I think that ultimately that, you know, that's what they're just fully focused on, getting into that top 6, 7. And, you know, they'll be very concerned that, you know, we finished incredibly poorly, and maybe they see that there's no way back in terms of Ange Postecoglou and that league form. So, yeah, I just struggle to kind of see what the plan is of this football club anymore. We've seen it for so long, but ultimately, I think that aim is just to get back into the, you know, finishing in that Champions League and ensuring that we're finishing higher in the league each year. You know, there'll be no intention of, you know, really giving the Champions League a good go. Obviously, they'll have that hope that we can go as far as we can. But yeah, I think ultimately it's just about finishing as hard as we can up the table, isn't it? Really.
It is indeed. Look, we have got to squeeze in our very, very belated first break of the show for our listeners and audio. It feels like a long, long time ago this was said by Ange Postecoglou. But this is what he did predict if Tottenham were to give him that 3rd season, which looks more than ever that it's not going to happen. Let's hear from Ange when we're back after this very, very short break.
I told them and they laughed. I told them and they didn't believe. But here we are. And we're here because of this unbelievable group of people, players and staff, absolute heroes, led by the legend, son Heung-Min. Kuti Rivera, James Madison, and Guillermo Vicario. All of them heroes, and they did it all for you. Because you deserve it. This club deserves it. And I'll tell you something, I'll leave you with this. All the best television series, season 3 is better than season 2. Thank you.
I tell you what, it does feel like we're in a massive soap opera at the moment. James had 8 years of it, Pat's had about 4. Ash is new to the scene. That's why he looks a lot younger than all of us. If it was for the very first time, as I said, thank you so much for joining us. We've got over nearly 8,000 that are watching the show live. Thanks so much for all incredible support for Last Word on Spurs. Please keep liking. Please keep subscribing. I think we have to come on to the point that for Daniel Levy, I mean, look, in his tenure, there's been some big decisions. Jamie, just to stick with you, is this Daniel Levy's biggest ever decision as Tottenham Hotspur head coach? I know, again, you was here when we sacked Pochettino for Jose Mourinho, but to sack a trophy-winning manager, at the same time having his worst ever points per game ratio, which it is under Ange Postecoglou, he can't get away from that. And bring in Thomas Frank, that isn't a proven winning manager. That some may argue Ange Postecoglou is.
Yeah.
Is that the biggest gamble he's going to be doing to date? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's, I'd say gamble. I just think that it felt like when that full-time whistle blew and just even thinking about the final and the build-up, everything that came with it was that feeling of we've won that trophy, we've got that major European Cup, you know, we've got that monkey off our back in that we've got that trophy, Champions League football, a Super Cup, and it just felt like there was this incredible platform to build on. And, you know, right now, there's a feeling that we're really wasting that away. So it's again, I wouldn't maybe describe it as a gamble. I just think that it's such a big moment for Tottenham. You know, obviously we saw the way we kind of reacted to losing that Champions League final. It set us back all that time, and that's why we've had to wait so long and been through all those painful moments over the last 5-6 years. And you know, now we've got this amazing opportunity. So, I mean, he's got a massive decision, you know, and he has to get it right, because, you know, yeah, I mean, I said it's a moment where Spurs really could kick on and go into that, you know, become that club we've always felt we could become, a team, you know, a club that finally could become, you know, one of the very elites, continuously being in the Champions League, continuously winning trophies. And I just fear as though he's going to blow this opportunity. So, as I said, you know, I don't know necessarily where it's the biggest gamble, but it's certainly just a massive opportunity. And you know, I've made my feelings clear. I think that he should be investing in what he's got with Ange Postecoglou, but it doesn't look like he's going to do that. And you know, he's going to roll the dice with Thomas Frank. And as we've said, it's, you know, is Thomas Frank really, you know, the upgrade on Ange Postecoglou? It's it's obviously a concern.
Pat, coming over to you. If Tottenham are to make a change, it would mean that if it is Thomas Frank or somebody else, it will be the 14th manager in 24 years for Daniel Levy. Let me just say that again. The 14th manager in 24 years for Daniel Levy. How much more patience? I don't think there isn't much patience left for Daniel in terms of the fans, and we've seen that from obviously the reaction even on the final day, which I'll play shortly. But I mean, we're at a point now where I think I know you're lost for words, I'm lost for words. I mean, that's staggering, isn't it? 14 managers in 24 years is going to be.
Yeah, it's shambolic, and a club of our stature, it just goes to show he keeps getting it wrong time and time again. You know, if you're on the 14th manager or in 24 years, then you are constantly getting it wrong. That's why you have to keep chopping and changing. The thing is, for Ange, the problem is obviously it's the league form. It was so bad, and I've said it all year, and I've said it all year, and I've said it all year again.
We know that, Pat. I mean, you've been so consistent in that, but I think you're right in what you're saying. There's no doubt about that. We know the league form is bad, but I think for a lot of people out there right now, like you've actually said, Pat, and again, you're a man of your word, what you've said. You've not gone back on what you've said. I think for a lot of people out there, they'll be the same as you. Not everyone, but does that justify bringing Thomas Frank in?
No, it doesn't.
No,
I think Ange should get sacked. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sit on the fence. I think Ange should get sacked. The league form is so bad. I don't think there's a way back from that. But if you're going to sack Ange, then you don't bring in a Thomas Frank. You go and get a top proven manager. And then the fans they'll be upset. There'll be lots of fans that are upset because they really like Ange. And he's bought us a trophy. He's bought us one of the best days of our lives. You know, even me as a guy that wasn't really sold on Ange whatsoever, the fact that Ange did what he said he was going to do, did that speech, had us all like at that moment, it was amazing. So if you are going to sack him, then you have to bring in a proven quality manager so the fans can understand where you're going and what the direction of the club is. And right now, if you bring in a Frank, I don't really see the direction. I don't get it. Yeah, you stabilize the club and maybe, you know, you get more bang for your buck and all of that, and I get it, those are all valid arguments, I get it, but it's not gonna make the fans happy essentially. So yeah, that's where I'm at. Vicky, is Vicky there?
I'm here. Sorry guys, mine's a bit triggering around, you can see someone's playing with it in the background, I can tell you. Ash, let me ask you on this point, you know, I read that record out there. We could be approaching the 14th manager in 24 years. It looks inevitable now. The last manager to get a contract extension, I'm laughing because Jamie knows who it is, was Maurizio Pochettino, who, let's be honest about it, the only reason that he's probably not on this shortlist is because we know he's got other commitments, of course, in the US. I mean, you don't even average a couple of years, 2.5 years at Tottenham. How is anybody meant to be successful in this cycle? And I think, again, this is where it loops back round to that there will be the ardent people out there that may not have been for Ange Postecoglou taking the third season. However, I think there'll be a lot of fans out there that said to them, you know, if you offered them, as we touched upon earlier, Frank coming in for Ange Postecoglou, I think a lot would stick with Ange, because I do think a lot of people will think the third season, it can't be as bad as the second one in terms of the Premier League. I refuse to believe it will be that bad. And it's also the damage, Ash, that it will do, as we've said, to the dressing room. We know players, they'll, as always, there'll be some that'll be delighted there's a change. There'll be some that'll be bought in that maybe weren't on the fringe, that were on the fringes that come back into the squad. But it's also at the same time how much it disrupts that momentum that you touched upon at the start of the show.
Yeah, I mean, just for the sake of being an echo chamber, I can say that, Romero, a key player, one of our captains, he seems that he's very much behind the actual manager. And it seems like he's come out and said, not word for word, but more or less indicated that if Postecoglou goes, he's going to be on his way out as well. Now, a lot of fans are on the fence with Romero, saying he'd rather play for Argentina than play for Spurs. There was lots of fans saying, his concentration wasn't there when he, put a player on side, or was standing too high up against Newcastle and we lost, I think it was 4-0 or 4-1. There's been times when he's been rash, leaving his foot in, doing reckless challenges in semi-finals as well, in finals even. But that's just the nature of the guy, and he loves the club. He loves Postecoglou, clearly. He's behind the manager. And so you don't want to lose one of your best players if that means sacking your manager. You kind of build a team, especially around the back, around someone like him, someone that's won, Copa Americas, someone that's won the World Cup. He's a leader. He hasn't lost a final. And even him in possession, like playing out from the back, is very hard to replace a player of his magnitude. In the air, he's a good threat as well, and set pieces, etc. I could go on forever about Ange Postecoglou, Romero, but not every player. I think players are replaceable. If I'm going to flip the other side of it, of the coin, I'm looking forward. I'm looking ahead. If we were to keep Ange Postecoglou, the pre-season is the first game as Newcastle. It's a tricky game. I know pre-season doesn't mean much, but could you imagine how flippant this fan base could be if we are to lose against Newcastle in pre-season one game? We play Arsenal next, then we lose another pre-season game. Then we go to Bayern Munich, we lose that as a pre-season game. Then we head to the Super Cup final. We play one of the best teams in the world in PSG. If we are to get smashed in the Super Cup, we saw what happened to Inter Milan. They got devastated 5-0. Could have been more, could have been 6, could have been 7 if Barcola puts those balls in the back of the net. And I remember when Liverpool won the Super Cup, and a lot of the players said they were tired coming into their first Premier League game, and they lost that game, and then that affected the start of their season. Could you imagine the amount of pressure Ange Postecoglou would be in if he lost the first 4 games? I know it's a pre-season, I know it's a friendly. People look at the Super Cup as a friendly, but going into that first game, he's lost it. And imagine if he lost the first 2 games, then all of a sudden the fan base are against him because they're now going to remember the 22 games. We're very fickle as fans. I'm just saying, I'm not saying this would happen. I'm just showing the other side of the argument. And if we are to persist with Postecoglou and it does go tits up, then it's going to be a lot harder to get another manager in if we're deep in September or deep in October. Regardless, Frank could sign a new contract by then. No, we know Glasner's looking to sign a new contract. Silva could be at Juventus. I've seen him linked to Juventus early this morning. Maybe the manager pool becomes smaller. Who knows? I'm just throwing it out there, guys. I'm throwing out scenarios that could possibly happen. And all of a sudden, the mood's here. And we're looking at Daniel Levy like, why didn't you change the manager when you had the chance? And so it goes back to Langer. We know he's close outside of football with Thomas Frank. We said already, he works on his data model approach, and that's how he's got the highest amount of chances. I think it was for Brentford at one point, where I think Risa had a record number of goals, and Bremer had a record number of goals, and their other striker, is it Shao? I forgot his name.
Sharda.
Sorry, apologize. Yep. Yeah, he had a record. So it's not like they don't score goals. For a pragmatic team, they score a lot of goals. The problem with the Postecoglou system is we score more than you I'm talking about in the Premier League, we scored 64 goals and conceded 65. Or was it the other way around? I can't remember. We got a -1 goal contribution at the end of the season. So
you're right. So we scored 64, conceded 65.
yeah.
So
To bake context into that though, and Robbie Keane did come out, just to be fair, to give balance, that we was missing our back five at some point. We were missing Romero, we were missing Van der Ven, we were missing the doggy and Vicario at one point. But for me, it's the structures tactically. As all fans were screaming, we need that number 6, because when we do lose that ball, those players are exposed, and that's what caused some of the injuries to our vital players like Mickey Van der Ven. His hamstrings kept going because he had to do so many sprints and recoveries just to get that. So there's a lot of things to bake into there, Ricky.
There is. I mean, just to pick up on what you've just said there, Ash, throwing it around a pat on that point, is that Robbie Keane has come out, for those that haven't seen the interview, and he's pleaded with Spurs supporters that they should give Ange time to build the football club. You've got Romero, a lot of links that Jamie was also across this, suggesting that their futures may be entwined, potentially Romero and Ange Postecoglou. Just feels like, Pat, we're approaching yet again another big decision in terms of how that then does have a detrimental impact on the squad and those that are around it. We've heard reports again, Bentancur, his contract situation may be tied up with regards to the future of Postecoglou. The same, of course, as we said with Romero. You've had James Maddison come out and throw his weight behind the manager. You've had Lucas Bergvall come out. You've had Archie Gray come out. Feels like, Pat, this is a massive decision that is going to weigh heavy on not just the ball, but also on the playing squad and the nature of what comes next for the club.
It's a huge sliding doors moment. It really is. And this is why I keep saying that if it's not going to be a top manager, then you keep Ange. And it's not me flip-flopping on my views. It's just like, I just don't see the point of upsetting apple cart for a so-so manager like a Frank or, a Silva. That is not really going to be much of a muchness. Either you go and get a world-class manager that will come in and you back him and you really push on, or you keep Ange and you back him and then you see what happens. I'm not sold on Ange, as you know, but the fact is, if you back him properly and the players are behind him and the fans are behind him, then let's see what happens. But with this all not really investing too much and kind of, 50-50 in and not really putting your money where your mouth is, it's just detrimental to the club. No one wins. The club doesn't win, the fans don't win, and certainly the players don't win. So if all the players are behind Ange and they're all saying that they want to play for him, then back him, give him all the tools he needs, like the guys are saying, a number 6 or this or that, and then really go for it. And if it doesn't work, then at least you've tried. But to do what we're doing now and possibly sack him and get in a Frank or a Silva is so underwhelming, and it just like one step forward and 2 steps back. For me, it just makes no sense.
On this point, Jamie, come over to you. When I look back, and we are going to bring this bit an Ange interview that's actually just dropped. We're going to bring in those comments to the show. Tottenham results versus Brentford since Ange Postecoglou took over. The last 4. Brentford 2, Tottenham 2. Of course, that was on the opening day of the 23-24 season. Tottenham 3, Brentford 2. Tottenham 3, Brentford 1. Brentford 0, Tottenham 2. Thomas Frank has never beaten Tottenham since Ange took over. The only teams we beat twice in the Premier League during the 24-25 season was Brentford, Man United, and relegated Southampton. Is that another reason why, Jay, there's this almost feeling of it being a sideways step and a lot of maybe underwhelming?
No, to a certain extent. I think it's just ultimately, I think there is that sense of it being underwhelming because we know how many times we've been let down in the past with different managers. I think that's another thing where we look at all these coaches and we're all just viewing it very pessimistically because, we've seen so many different profiles of managers all fail at this football club and, we're all sick of these rebuilds and, whoever they're under, whether they were under, a big major manager, it's just tricky to keep having to go again. So that for me is what I'm just not looking forward to, having to once again look to rebuild. And I said, it's just come at such an important time in at Spurs where we've got this amazing platform to build on. And I just fear that, again, we're not going to fully capitalize on it. So, yeah, it's just so frustrating. But that's how the club is. You know, I said even if we were to get in an elite level manager, I just feared that we wouldn't have the, you know, we wouldn't go and back them anyway. So you know, for me, whoever came in anyway was always going to be you know, working under real constraints. So yeah, it's a horrible situation.
Let's bring you up to date. We've had an interview that's dropped over from ABC News that is over in Australia. They're part of the Australian Broadcasting Corporation. Ange just spoke directly to them whilst being on holiday. Let's bring you those quotes that Ange just said to them with regards to what he's made of his time so far at Tottenham. Ange just said, I have no doubt that for me, the mission when I joined the football club was to win a trophy. He was also asked to reflect on the parade, and he said, when asked about the speech that he made at the parade, he said, I didn't want us just to enjoy the moment. I also want us to think about what's next. You know, don't settle for this. We've got a taste of it now. My players have got a taste for it. The club's got a taste for it. Well, let's make sure we're back here again. He also said, when we sat down 10 years ago and did the initial Australian story, I think maybe even you guys thought that was a culmination of what I was about to achieve. In 10 years' time, if we sit down again, I've got no doubt in my mind that there'll be even more stories to tell. What's your reaction to that interview, Jamie? What do you make of those words from Ange?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, it's just you know, he obviously fully believes that he's still the right man for this football club. And yeah, that's what I said. It just feels like this is something we can build on. I mean, I just remember back to that day at the parade and just that whole feeling of this amazing sense that, you know, we've never had this at Spurs, where we've got this togetherness, we've got this belief, and you know, it's just something I said we should totally be investing in, and I just can't believe that, you know, we're going to kind of give it up and go for, as we said, a sideways step in maybe someone like a Thomas Frank. It's just such a ridiculous situation, and you know, again, it's that risk as well of where we're potentially upsetting everything we've got. I mean, just, you know, you hear all the quotes about the players. I mean, there is a reason why they still like him and why they still believe in him. And yeah, it's just ridiculous that we're not going to invest in that.
We understand, coming over to you, Ash, that I think one of the biggest problems, I think Ali Gold has reported this, I think Creator Ali, I think in one of these pieces, that some within the club just didn't understand Postecoglou's decision to prioritise the Europa League once he felt the injury-ravaged Spurs squad could neither achieve anything in the Premier League nor get relegated, with a feeling that he was putting all of his eggs into one basket. However, crucially, the players never lost belief in his assertion that they would create history at the end of the campaign, and he was proved right. And again, there's been those insinuations out there that he took the players to where there were those black and white photos of ex-Tottenham players winning trophies, and he said, look, this is an opportunity for you to put yourselves on this wall, which they have done. And that's why there are serious fears that this is going to cause a dressing room backlash if he is to be sacked. Do you see this as Pat touched upon there being a real sliding doors moment for the club?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, no, what it is with Ange Postecoglou, he is definitely a motivational speaker in terms of motivating, you know, the teammates, galvanizing the fan base, almost trying to create a visionary where he paints a picture with words and it kind of lasts with you. I think that's why he's had so many fans on side. He's pulled out heartstrings, like going over to each player's houses or homes, meeting their family, talking to their loved ones, getting inside their heads. He's not the first manager to do this type of tactic, but it clearly works and he gets players to buy into it. But like I said, it's not just the players that buy into it, it's the fans as well. And logically, if you think about it, you'd say that, you know, if the league is basically we're 14th, we're 13th, we're 10th, we're 15th, 17th, does it really matter? Was that going to bring us any joy? Is it going to make a difference of where we end up? And the trophy will bring more glory. And that's what the game's about. The game's about glory. And so That's the reason why he took that logical approach, in my opinion. However, like, it was a gamble because there was no, it's not given that you're going to win a trophy. You know, it's probably the easiest route into top four if you look at the competition, the teams you had to beat. But you have to beat the teams that are in front of you. You know, at the start of the season, we were favourites. Let's have it right. We were favourites. But as the competition went on and as our league form dipped, you know, we also became unfavourites. I think Manchester United overtook us at one point. Even going into the final, we weren't favourites. So to get it over the line, it cannot be sniffed at. It cannot. You have to win and get it over the line. And he did it. He gave the belief to the fans. He gave the belief to the players. He talked about the black and white photos. And I even bought into it, you know. I said, yeah, you know what? This is a historic moment. And they have the opportunity to change that hurt, that 17 years of wait, and it means more. It means more. So I think that's what he did well with that speech he just said there. And I think that's why it's so hard for the board to make this decision. Ultimately, though, I think when Vinay's come in, I think he's come in, he's had a different idea of where he sees the club. I think Paratici coming into the fold of it, I think there would have been conversations had, and also Langard. All three of them would have had a conversation with Levy, and they would have said when things weren't going well, where they see the club, what direction they should, you know, we should be heading in, and what that looks like in 25-26 season, what type of manager we're going to have, what style of football we're going to be having to be, you know, to stabilize the club, because that's what we needed. 17th, where we were, it's unheard of in our lifetimes, you know. So it's such a, like you said, up and down moment. You could either say, I could say something that's really wrong, I could see something that's really right. I could see the comments right now. Some are agreeing with me, some are saying, no, man, you're talking absolute nonsense.
It's divided. Isn't it? It's massively divided. Actually, I agree with what you're saying there, 100%. I tell you, Pat, I mean, we have to also say on this point that, you know, the club have been, I think Ali also referred to this in his recent piece, or one of the recent pieces, they've been pumping out social media content, you know, endlessly over the last week or so, with Ange featuring in that social media content, coming soon, the behind the scenes of the dressing room. I mean, is it really kind of taking away all that momentum and joy that was there a week ago by what they're doing right now? I mean, and I'm asking you that, Pat, and I know, Pat, you are someone that, again, has been vehemently, you know, feeling that Ange isn't the right man, but you've said on this show here that you certainly wouldn't be swapping him for Thomas Frank. So what's your gauge on that about how they've managed this, the club?
I think it just goes to show that the club don't know what's going on, and this is the problem. The club have no direction. So how do you expect the fans? The reason why the fans are so divided and there's so many people that don't know what's going on or don't know how to feel is because the club doesn't have a direction. The club should be leading the fans the right way and showing them what's next. What's, you know, we've just won a major trophy. We should have. This is the highest point that you can feel right now. We should be all over the moon, all coming together, all on the same hymn sheet, and all literally marching in the same direction towards Champions League football, towards being better, towards better prospects. But yet we are where we are, where we're now undecided on the manager. The fans are undecided what happens next, and it's just a mess. It's a big mess. And if the club had any sort of balls, and you know, they would just literally show us what's going on, and then we understand where we're at. And it's a mess, man. And it's a shame because, like, at the end of the day, for everything I didn't like about Ange, there is a lot I do like about him. And the fact that he won us a major trophy. And I'm someone that, you know, forget my feelings. I care about the club first and foremost. And Ange delivered. He delivered what he said he was going to deliver. He gave us one of the best days of our recent lives, recent club history. And we all came together and we all celebrated that. So then you are then going to do what you're doing. And either you back him or you don't, you know. But even if you bring someone else in, you have to back this manager, because ultimately the club will then continue to go backwards. So I just don't, the club just need to really understand what they're doing. And it just feels that for everything that, you know, the club have been so on point with the social media that we've taken
Especially
the piss out of
recently.
all, yeah, we've
Last
taken
few
the piss
weeks.
out of all the trolls. We've really showed what it meant to the club, to the fan base, to the players. They've really got that emotive side of things, but yet then you're going to squash it all with this wishy-washiness and not knowing what you're doing. It's really odd. Again, it boils down to Daniel Levy just not knowing what he wants this club to be, or just not having the ambition and the balls to really push the club forward. If you're never going to push the club forward now at this moment in time, when is it ever going to happen?
But isn't it a thing where, like, because I was like you, Pat, I was like, all right, we've got the stadium to push on. All right, we've got Champions League, cool. And we won a trophy. Surely with all of that, you know, income, we've got the outside, you know, boxing. We saw Eubank fight Ben. We saw, you know, Beyonce's happening, etc. So we've got revenue streams to help us, you know, to push on. The Levy, before we won that cup, he came out and said, we have to sell to buy, and we're self-sustaining.
Yep.
And then on, you know, other platforms, other social media platforms, they were saying Spurs, financial experts were saying Spurs do have assets. We're rich in assets. But when it comes to cash, we don't have the necessary liquid cash to go out and buy transfers. So I'm like, is it a case where we don't actually have a real budget where we can go out and splash the cash? And maybe that's the reason why they're looking at a coach that can get maybe more out of the players that we have already. Because a lot of people, and look, I know why people up and down flip-flop, because before the final, there was lots of people saying it doesn't matter if Ange wins a trophy. We want him out. Let's be honest here. There was a lot of people that said that.
Of course it was. Of course it was.
When he won it, people changed their minds. Do you know what I mean? And I don't begrudge anyone for that, because
Of course not. You're allowed to change
people
your mind.
don't-
Can't you?
yeah, you're allowed to change your mind, number one. And people didn't know what it felt like to win. So, and as you said, Patrick, like meeting up with people, seeing the fans, you know, was the happiest days of
Family
our
and
life.
friends. He gave Ash, as you said, he'd let you come back on this point. He gave people one of the best days of their footballing sporting life.
Exactly. But then you just say, look, we shouldn't, with this squad, with these amount of players, we shouldn't be 17th. Naturally, next season we will naturally push up. We won't finish 17th. I don't believe we'll get relegated. But I'm thinking maybe they don't have the actual money to go out and spend. You know, people think it's 200 million or 150 million. Maybe it's less. Maybe it's 100 million. Maybe it's 80 million. And we still need to sell players like your Basumas to raise a bit more cash, your Brian Hills, your Højbjergs, and the little bit of money we do get. Fans do want like players like Eze, but maybe we can't afford an Eze, because the reality of it is Crystal Palace, they want, you know, 50 to 60 million up front, which we don't actually have that budget, because we need to spend the money on 4 or 5 positions. And so maybe that's why we're linked with, you know, your Angel Gomez on the free, you're linked to Sane on the free. Do you know what I mean? We're looking at all these free options because we don't have the actual cash to generate these big sales that we want. And so maybe that's the reason why they're looking at coaches to get more out of the squad that we currently have. I don't know. I'm just throwing it out there. I'm just
all very
speculating
fair points.
I think there is a concern. There was a good report on the BBC today. I think it was Kieran Maguire. He was saying that Spurs still owe like just over 330 million pounds in transfer fees still, and apparently a lot of that's owed this summer. So, you know, again, it's kind of obviously, you know, we're a club that we've always said works, you know, self-sustaining, and you know, I just wish that we had owners, or wish that the owners would, you know, put a bit of money in, because as I said, well, I think we are going to be limited, unfortunately, and I just don't understand it, because you know, we've obviously had to make all these sacrifices with the stadium and everything. You know, we left White Hart Lane, we moved to this new stadium, we host all these events, and yet we're still acting like we were the same club that we were when we were at the old White Hart Lane. So, yeah, it's a good report.
Does it go back to that point, though, Jay? Just to let you come back on this. Does it go back to that point then where there's clearly a split at board level, there's clearly a split amongst the fan base? Is the reality that for the board, they feel that Thomas Frank is going to offer them a better chance in the league than Ange Postecoglou, and it isn't about even trophies. Because if this was about trophies, let's be honest about it. I think Ange has won, what, 6 or 7 trophies? He's got a proven record when it comes to finals. Won his last, I think, 2 or 3 in a row. Frank, with all due respect, you could argue he maybe hasn't had the squad to do it or has had the players to do it, but Ange has. And we're getting rid of Ange potentially for Frank. Is that all coming down just the league position alone then?
Yeah, well, we know. I mean, we know what Daniel Levy's thoughts on trophies are. Obviously, when he named, I think was it the start of the season when he named top 3 achievements. Obviously, that League Cup wasn't anywhere to be seen. So there is that as well. And as I said, with Thomas Frank, I think there are 2 things that will stand out for Daniel Levy. A, it will be the fact that he's developed players really well, and obviously, as we've said many times now, that's the way that this club runs. They want players, they'll look to bring in players like the younger players and develop them up. There'll be no ambition to go and sign the real top elite players and pay them big wages. That's the way we run. And then, of course, there is the fact that Daniel Levy, as I mentioned, the focus is on getting that Champions League, being in consistently in Europe. And I think he obviously fears that Ange Postecoglou isn't going to be able to succeed in that league format. And look, I think in terms of that Europa League, I think I've never ever seen Spurs play like that in a knockout competition. I know whatever anyone says about who the teams that we played, I think Frankfurt were a really strong team. We were told that we had no chance against Man United, yet we got the job done. So yeah, we know that Ange Postecoglou's view on Daniel Levy's view on winning trophies, and it's all about league positions and all about developing players, and that's obviously why he's going to go for that change, and looks like he's going to bring in someone like Thomas Frank.
It is going to be a fascinating next day or so with Tottenham. You feel that decision is having to come imminently, because it just feels like the noise around Tottenham, the fan base, is getting louder upon louder. And I just wonder, I mean, again, Pat, we heard actually Ange, in his final presser after the game against Brighton, where he did call upon the club to the fact that they want to keep Romero. They need more experienced players, no doubt about that. They've got a lot of youth players that have come in and done well, the likes of Bergvall, Gray, of course, but he did make that very, very clear. The club are going to need to bring in higher caliber players. Is that maybe another reason why they may be deviating away from Ange and going for Frank? Because maybe they feel that, as we've touched upon already, Frank can maybe get the best out of what they've already got, and there maybe won't be a situation where they're going to really push the boat out. Because I know that's what a lot of Spurs fans would love to see this. Some of them really go into the window, go and sign the likes of an Eze, arguably go and bolster up midfield, which I know many are crying out for a genuine number 6. Is that the biggest problem here, Pat? Comes down to that word ambition.
Yeah, ambition, and you're just robbing Peter to pay Paul if you're not actually going to invest in the squad, regardless of who the manager is. The squad needs reinvestment. It needs reinforcements so we can push on. Like Jamie said about if Chelsea were in our position and they actually went and won. I mean, Chelsea did win a trophy, but if they won a Europa or Champions League and they were in our exact same position, they would invest and push on. Man United already are investing, and they're meant to be broke. They just splashed 62 million on Cunha, and then definitely not going to stop there. They're going to keep pushing on. And I know Ash said, he's playing devil's advocate and he's putting all the ideas out there, and I love that about Ash, but I don't understand how Tottenham could be in a position where we don't have cash right now. The club is cash rich, was rich before we moved stadium. We make so much money from everything other than football, and from a footballing perspective, we're on TV all the time, so that's broadcasting money. We had a great run in Europe, so that's good money. We're in the Champions League, so that's more money. So this whole idea or notion that Tottenham are poor and we have to buy to sell, it's rubbish. It's what they're just pushing out so that the club, again, can't be ambitious and has something to hide behind. So I just don't understand. When are we actually going to see Tottenham become the ambitious club that we were promised when we moved from White Hart Lane to this stadium? And regardless of who the manager is, the club needs players. We need another playmaker. We need another top centre-back. We need an Eze-type midfielder. These are all players that are going to cost 50, 60 million. If we want to push on and be, challenging in the Champions League and in the Premier League, as per whoever the manager is, the club needs to push on now. So I just don't get it, and I'm not buying it. I'm not buying it at all.
before we do come to summary, I just want to say, guys, thanks so much out there. We've got nearly 10,000 that are watching the show. Quite incredible numbers for Last Word on Spurs. And I mean, look, we always seem to get them in the space of a panic or a crisis or an emergency show, which Jamie Brown normally ends up on. It might not be the first time Jamie Brown's ended up on here with regards to what was coming our way. We've got some big shows planned. Like I say, just guys, if you can, keep on liking, subscribing. I think really important for this kind of show. It does go out to a worldwide Spurs audience that I think are all going to be very, very split as to what the right decision is for Tottenham. I think, again, for the feeling over the last 7-8 days, like the guys alluded to, there'll be some that maybe thought Ange was the right man and wasn't the right man, but Thomas Frank to throw him in and be replaced. Like I said earlier, I'll make my point what I said earlier. I think, where I was at a few days ago, and many know that I've been vehemently of the feeling that I've had real concern over Ange managing a 38-game campaign. Those concerns are still very much there for me. They're still very much in the forefront of my mind. You can't get away from the fact we've had, our worst return in the league since 1977, 48 years since we were relegated, 10 losses at home from 22 of the 38 games. Everyone knows how bad the form has been. But the reality is that I think if you said to a lot of Tottenham fans, you're going to get rid of the manager that delivers a European trophy, the first one over 40 years, going to remove the manager that ends a 17-year trophy drought, and you're going to bring somebody in the ilk of Thomas Frank. With no disrespect to Frank, I like him as a person. I would urge everyone, if they haven't already, go and watch that great documentary that we saw on Sky Sports with Frank. It's about a 15-20-minute documentary. Can't come away from that and not feel anything, but he looks like a great man. He seems like a good guy. But the thought of him coming in and being the man that's going to take Tottenham to the very, very next level, I just don't feel that is the right feeling. And, I think everyone's got their own gut feeling as to what they feel is right. I'm not sure if Thomas Frank is that man, but I do like him as a person. I think whatever happens, like every appointment that Tottenham make, we'll get behind them on the show. But gut feeling, Jay, does it feel like to you a mistake? Does it feel like a mistake to you? Or is it difficult to say that until we see him in action? If that happens.
Yeah, I mean, look, firstly, I mean, I wouldn't make the change with Ange Postecoglou. I mean, I've kept saying that on this show, and that's what I believe. I wouldn't make that change. I like Thomas Frank, though. I do think that he could be a good coach for Spurs, and I do feel like it could be a good fit. I know, obviously, people kind of will look at his CV and whatever. I think he's earned this opportunity to come and work at a big club. I know, obviously, we are desperate. And we do want to see those big name managers come in, but we've not seen that work at Spurs. I think these type of managers have worked, and I think that Thomas Frank has that ability to kind of work on a bigger scale as well. And I would be interested to see that. It's just, I think there is also just that fear and just that, that constant doubt in the back of my mind that we've seen endless managers fail at Spurs. So as much as I do like Thomas Frank, I can see it just ending up like almost every other manager has. I mean, I can't believe that, Ange Postecoglou has managed to succeed in the circumstances. I think that's what's even more unbelievable what he's managed to achieve.
Jay, just on that point, let you stick with that. Is that also a key that with all the managers that we have that have failed here, Ange has actually made it work at Tottenham? Look, take away the league one for a second. He has done what no manager has managed to do under Enoch in 17 years and win a trophy. He's done that. He also knows the circumstances in which he's got to work in. And I wonder how crucial that is at Tottenham. Because we hear this from every manager that comes to Tottenham, and I will get the guys on this before we close as well, that you hear it every time, every manager, if it's Mourinho, if it's Conte, whoever it's Nuno, I didn't realise what it was like until I came here. The thing about Ange is going into the third season, Ange knows what it's like to manage at Tottenham, and he's won at Tottenham. Not only has he known what it's like to manage at Tottenham, he's won at Tottenham.
Yeah.
And you're also going to take that away now to bring in somebody that doesn't know what it's like to manage at Tottenham and come in on the back of somebody that's just won a trophy, ended a 17-year trophy drought, ended a 40-year wait for a European trophy, Jamie.
Yeah, it's a crazy debate. I mean, is it with the Ange thing? Because look, obviously, I think Pat's totally right about his views in terms of Ange Postecoglou, but as well, I mean, it's just crazy to think how poor we were in the league, yet we've succeeded with winning that trophy. But yeah, it's just the circumstances. I think that Ange Postecoglou has, succeeded under in delivering that trophy in that first year. Obviously, I think we were very unfortunate not to get into that top four. But I think it's very important to remember the circumstances that he did take over as well when he lost Harry Kane. I mean, for me, that was the lowest point when we were under Antonio Conte. I just think that I did not see a way forward when we'd lost Harry Kane. I thought that the squad was a real mess. I think that there was a real, just a horrible feeling at the club, obviously having to go through that football that we watched under Conte, his constant press conferences, and Ange took over in really difficult circumstances, and yet he succeeded. And I just think that what he's done at Spurs, there is that caveat, and I know why fans are frustrated, and I do get that, and I think that they're perfectly right to think that way. But I just look at how he's delivered that trophy, how he got us back into the competition in the first place as well. Just incredible credit. And it's just I can't believe we're not going to build on it. So yeah, unbelievable.
Guys, before we do go, I'm asking you guys to Ash as well. What do you think the feeling will be if and when it is Thomas Frank replacing Ange Postecoglou? Will fans actively, I think as we've always done, we'll always get behind the manager, but I tell you what, you need to get off to a good start, Ash. Is that how you maybe see things given the way in which we're going to let go Ange Postecoglou? We know the 22 defeats, we know that, but it comes off the back of also winning a trophy and bringing somebody in that, with all due respect, as Pat has said as well, doesn't have a CV even touching Ange Postecoglou.
Yeah, I think that's the reason why most fans, if Postecoglou was to be sacked, because we still don't know. We don't know if he's going to be sacked. We're speculating still.
I know, but it just feels, that with regards to the stuff, I don't know. I even though I feel uncomfortable with Ash by the fact that, we're talking to other managers. This guy has just won Tottenham, their first major trophy in 40 years, ended a 17-year trophy drought. I get football. This is football. You have to talk behind other managers' backs, but we're talking behind the back of a manager that's just won a European trophy and also wants to stay at the club and build on it.
Yeah, no, I hear it. I feel like with Frank, because he's not the elite manager, and as Spurs fans, we've got, high expectations. We should be having an Inzaghi, a Xavi, we had Conte, we've had Mourinho in the past. That's our chest, that's our level, and we won't accept anything lower than that. And so Thomas Frank bringing, all respect to Brentford, bringing them up from a championship into the Premier League. They're a smaller outfit. Their culture is completely different to what he's going into Tottenham. Tottenham's a massive stadium. Like we said already, the expectation from the fan base is completely different. So that might not give him as much time. But from what I'm reading into from the fans in the comments, a lot of fans are saying, Thomas Frank, he's not it. They like the manager. They got nothing against him. But in terms of stature or gravitas or where we think we should be heading, they think that Thomas Frank will just keep us afloat, maybe 7th to 10th. And Ange Postecoglou just want us an actual trophy. And so that's where they're comparing. Now, my question is really, what is the likelihood, what is the percentage of Ange winning another trophy a following season? That's where my head's at. Can he win back-to-back trophies in this stewardship? Is it possible? Can he win another FA Cup? Mind you, he would have to beat teams like higher opposition, Chelsea's or Liverpool and Aston Villa, Newcastle or Manchester United. It will no longer be a Bodo Glimt. It will no longer be a Ferencváros or that type of ilk team. It would have a harder time to win a trophy. So maybe, just maybe, hear me out, guys. I know people are throwing me under the bus. He's talking rubbish, blah, blah, blah. Get him off, Ash. Get him off, Ricky. I'm just saying, those competitions...
They've been trying to get me off Ash for 8 years. Don't worry about it.
I'm just saying, technically, the FA Cup, the League Cup, look what Newcastle had to beat Liverpool. We couldn't beat Liverpool. We couldn't beat Aston Villa. Do you know what I mean? In FA Cup, we got knocked out by those teams. So are we saying that Ange is going to win Champions League or win the Premier League? Or are we saying that, which is a fair enough point, that we're going to beat our competition? Because let's face it, our new competition, our new rivals right now are Aston Villa. We have to beat them. Is our squad better than Aston Villa's right now? Is our squad better than Newcastle? When I'm talking about Newcastle, I'm talking about a Bruno Guimaraes. I'm talking about a Tonali, midfield. Is our midfield any close to that? Do we have an Isak type level quality? Like, do we have Anthony Gordon's? I'm just asking questions here. I'm not saying yes or no. And a lot of people aren't going to be liking this. They'll be like, Ash, what are you talking about? You're talking rubbish. We beat Frankfurt. Frankfurt were third in the Bundesliga. You know, that was a higher level competition. But the Premier League is a different beast, in my opinion. And I think, yes, we did finish fifth. But I think that season to this season where we just had, even City have been found out. Like, the possession-based teams no longer are the teams that are doing ultra well. Like, you're seeing teams that play a lot more direct, conquer teams that like to play with a lot of possession. Even when we did have possession, we don't really hold on to the ball very well because we don't have the players to play possession side football. That's why I was saying earlier on in the stream that when we've had lesser percentage of the ball, we've had less possession, we've actually won games. Do you know what I mean? And maybe they're looking at that thinking, oh, wait, hold on a second. This possession-based style football that Ange wants to play isn't quite working. And when we have less of the ball, that seems to be working. And maybe we bring in a coach that marries up with that philosophy. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I'm not saying that's the right answer, guys. Just before people, put the rope around my neck and, throw stones at me. Get him out. What is he talking about?
Very hard. I think we have to also remember. I will say, listen,
I'm literally covering all angles, and I'm just speaking what's going through my mind. Do you know what I'm saying?
100%.
So,
I think we have to also say with Frank. One thing we have to say is that Frank, as I've said actually throughout this show, he's never had the chance at this level. And I think you touched on it earlier, Ash, when you said he has had that ability to adapt in game, different formations. And the reality is that everybody needs that big first chance. But it does feel like, back to Pat's point earlier, we seem to always be the club that gives out that first chance to everybody. Pat, let me ask you the question to close it on. I think a really important question to close it on. Who is under more pressure next season? Ange going into season 3 or Thomas Frank in his first season at Tottenham?
Oh, it'd be Thomas Frank all day long, 100%. If Ange has just won a trophy, he's brought the fans back on board that wanted him out, wanted his head in a noose, wanted nothing to do with him. Obviously, players would have wavered possibly when we were getting beat left, right, and centre in the league, and yet he delivered on literally the final day, the second to last game of the season, and you saw what it meant to the players. You saw what it meant to, players like a Brennan Johnson or maybe a Maddison who moved. Brennan Johnson moved, big money, a lot of question marks on him, slaughtered on social media, had to deactivate his account, then he had to disable his comments, ridiculed. All he does, if he doesn't score, he doesn't do much, blah, blah, blah. This guy scored in the semi-final, scored the massive life-changing goal. The Johnson chant is all over the place. It's a chant that you can't get out of your head. He's now a hero. You see the personality of Brennan Johnson, where he wouldn't lead the stage and he's like drunk and tipsy and he's running around, and you see another side to all these players. You really connect with them. Ange has brought that out. Ange has done that. And then you get rid of him for a guy that's not proven really at the level that we need him to be proven at. Thomas Frank is a good manager. We've all said that. None of us have a bad word to say about him. We like him. We like his demeanor. We like his character. We like what he's done for the club. But he's not at the level where we would want Tottenham to be at. He's not. Has he played in Europe? I don't think he has. Has he played or has he taken Brentford deep in a cup run or cup competition? I think the answer is no. But yeah, he is a good manager. He's improved players. So for me, Ange Postecoglou has credit in the bank now. He does. He can't get off to a bad league start because obviously where we finished was unquestionable. None of us want to talk about that, so I won't talk about that again. But Ange has credit in the bank. So for me, if you sack Ange, you have to, like I keep saying, and I've said it all pod long, you have to go for a top manager so the fans can get behind it and also the players. If not, your Romeros, your Kulusevskis, your Maddisons, do they buy into Thomas Frank? I think that's very questionable.
And Jamie's face says it all to your answer there, Pat. I tell you. Listen, final question to all of us, and we are going to close. I appreciate we'll take us long over time. Final one to everybody. Start with you, Pat. What comes next? What's going to happen?
I think they stick with Ange. Yeah. I mean, we're all saying this
You
like
think
it's
you think
done.
to go as far as this now and stick with Ange? You think that?
Unless I think it's a top manager. I mean, I'm just hoping. I'm wishing out loud here, but I just think it'd be crazy to sack Ange and bring in Thomas Frank or a Silva. I just don't understand that. So yeah, if you're not going to bring in a top manager, stick with Ange, honestly. So yeah, that's what I'm saying.
I'll tell you what, I might be surprised. Pat saying what he said. It has been a nuts season. I tell you, what
Tottenham
a
are
season.
nuts. So hopefully this is a smoke.
Tottenham are nuts. We're nuts. Ash, you're a little bit nuts as well, my mum is saying. Ash, what comes next?
Yeah, of course, bro. Listen.
We're all nuts. We're nuts for doing this. We're nuts for doing this.
If Ange is to stay, let me say this. He needs the coaching staff. When I say coaching staff, he needs defensive coaches. Ryan Mason's just left, and he's taking coaching staff with him. Yep. So he's going to need defensive coaches. I wanted, I forgot the guy's name, but he's Pep's, Nick's, Klopp's coaching staff.
Pep
Linders, yeah. And I was saying earlier this week, before I saw the news, that is something we need to learn how to press, because loads of teams, what they're doing is they're beating our press, switching the play down the flank, just like PSG did to Inter Milan, and then they're hurting us down the sides. So we desperately, if Ange is to stay, need to get top coaches in to work on our off the ball work. But I don't think this is going to happen. I think he's going to get sacked. I'm sorry, guys. I'm being honest. I think the league form is your bread and butter. And I think the decision's out of our hands as fans. It's coming down to the new direction of Vinay and Paratici and Langer. And I think all of them have looked at different options and they're going to pick it. It's not what I want. Obviously, I would love a Xavi or Inzaghi even. I would take an Inzaghi. But I don't think we're going to get that, man. You know.
And just to confirm, Ash, you think we're getting Thomas Frank?
Yeah, I think we'll get I think we'll get Frankie.
Jay, 8 years on, 8 years later.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
what comes next?
I think I'm with Ash. I think there's just been too much noise today in terms of, I think that it's the club kind of putting it out there that there is going to be a change. It just feels like that's the noise they're putting out there. And yeah, it just looks like Thomas Frank is going to be that choice. I mean, it always kind of felt like that he was going to be probably the number one as long as Ange had been struggling, just because of that real strong link with Langer. So just from the noise that I'm hearing from the media outlets and kind of the people that have that information, it just feels as though they've been putting it out there. They're kind of bracing the fans for that change, and that's just the feeling that I'm getting. I do sense that there is going to be a change at Tottenham, and what we're going to see, what is it, the 15th, 16th different manager in 24 years under Daniel Levy. So I'm sure it's going to be a great success.
Will he be lucky number 14? It will be number 14 in 24 years. You have to go back to Pochettino to find the man who last got a contract extension. Thomas Frank, potentially the next manager tasked with Tottenham Hotspur as his football club. I want to say a massive thank you to the wonderful Jimmy Brown over at the Daniel Hotspur. Jay, where can we find what you're going to be providing to us a lot for the Spurs community? Where can they find all the work you do for us?
Yeah, just on Twitter, I think. I mean, obviously, going to be a crazy next couple of days, I'm sure, as it always is at Tottenham Hotspur. But look, I just want us to kind of get back on track. I mean, I said, we've got this amazing.
How long are you going back? Get back on track.
Sorry. Get back on track. Yeah, I think I'm going back in before my lifetime, so get back on track. But I want us to get on the. Actually, sorry, I take that back. I want us to get on the track first, actually, because that's probably what we need to do. Get on any sort of direction. But I said we've got this incredible platform to build on now that Ange Postecoglou has delivered for us that no other manager under Daniel Levy could have done. Well, maybe apart from one day Ramos. But now, it's so frustrating seeing Man United moving for players. It's so frustrating seeing Chelsea moving for players. They're all getting a march on us. So
course.
can we just have some clarity and just try and show some vision? But look, I've said it so many times on this show where I've called for that, and I just know it's not going to come. So yeah, I'd love to show some positivity, but I don't think we're going to get much clarity. Even though we might find out who the next manager is, I know we're not going to get that sense of direction. So that's Tottenham Hotspur, isn't it?
It is. It's the history of the Tottenham. I want to say a massive thank you to Patty Tyrant. We'll catch Pat across, I'm sure, what's going to be a busy period for Last Word on Spurs, where we've got to go again. We've got to go again through yet a potential another manager coming in. I want to say a massive thank you to Ash at the Spurs Kings. Of course, catch them for more. Guys, it's Tottenham, isn't it? It's Tottenham. Listen, we'll be with you every step of the way as to what comes next, but it does appear Ange Postecoglou's tenure at Spurs is coming to an end, and Thomas Frank could be taking that hot seat. From myself, from the wonderful Jamie Brown, the Daniel Hotspur, from the superb Patrick Tyrant, from the brilliant, charismatic Ashmatic at the Spurs Kings. We've been the Last Word on Spurs. It's going to be a busy one. Keep going. Keep the faith. We'll be back with you probably sooner than you'll know it. And as always, come on, you Spurs, please.